So how does an inflammation heal? Now, it heals by two processes, repair and healing. Now, how does this happen? Now, when you go to, while you're driving your car and suddenly you find a noise or a sound in the engine and you're worried that there's something wrong with the engine in your car, you take it to the mechanic. And in the mechanic shed, the mechanic would actually go through and analyze what is the problem with the car, and then he would make an estimate based on whatever spare parts are needed. He would tell you that, look, the carburetor is gone or the fan belt is gone, and I need to replace this. It would cost me, it would cost you $2,000. While I would tell him that, look, this is an old car. I don't want to spend too much on this. Anyway, I'm going to sell it. I just give you $500. Can you just patch it up and make it in running condition for me? I'm going to sell it in 6 months. So the same thing happens in the body. When you get injured, when there is an inflammation, the body analyzes and tells you that I need to go through steps A, B, C, D, E to heal you. But you have only a certain amount of raw materials left in your body, a certain amount of factors. So based on this, your healing will be complete or partial or incomplete, or it will not heal. So based on that, we are going through two definitions in the first slide, repair and regeneration and healing. Repair is regeneration of injured cells by cells of the same type. Thus, old cells keep dying and new cells keep getting replaced. Now for this, you need a basement membrane. For example, the skin. The old cells of the skin keep dying and falling off, and new cells keep replacing the skin. So the skin has a basement membrane, the basal layer of the squamous cell. The gastrointestinal tract has the basal membrane. And so the old cells keep dying and falling off. Hematopoietic cells. Old cells keep dying, new cells keep forming from the bone marrow. The same thing in the liver. So repair is regeneration of injured cells by cells of the same type. The new cells that are formed are the cells of the same type. The second aspect, healing, is replacement by fibrous tissue, which means the cells die, but I do not have fresh cells to replace it. I replace it with a scar. So in repair, I have a problem with the car. The engine is cracking, breaking. So I replace it with another component of the engine. But in the second part, I do not have the component of the engine, so I replace it with a bandage or a tape around it. And that tape is a scar. So in healing, it is a replacement by fibrous tissue. That is, the connective tissue is replaced by a scar. This is also called as fibroplasia, that is proliferation of fibrous tissue, which results in a scar formation. Now, when do you get healing? Healing occurs when the basement membrane is not there. In the first case, I told you this requires an intact basement membrane. In the second case, the basement membrane is not there. The skin is cut. The basement membrane is cut. So this would occur in an incision. It could be a surgical wound incision or in stomach ulcers, as you saw in the first picture, or in a heart attack or myocardial infarction where necrosis of the cells occurs. So the new cells cannot be replaced, but the new cells cannot be regenerated, so it is replaced by fibrous tissue. So these are two concepts that you guys need to understand before I move on. So I'm going back to the first part, regeneration. The old cells are being replaced by new cells. Okay, so when this occurs, the entire process is controlled by a few biochemical factors. And these biochemical factors respond to cell injury. Remember necrosis and apoptosis? When necrosis and apoptosis occur, there are certain biochemical factors that are released. Or if there is any trauma or permanent cell death or injury, in all these cases, biochemical factors are released. And these biochemical factors control the cell cycle. Now, the cell cycle, as you've all done in biochemistry, is a cycle where one cell divides into 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, and so on. Now, before I continue with this, let me go on to the next slide and show you what the cell cycle is, and I'll come back to this slide. Now in every cell cycle, you have the G1 phase where the cell grows, S phase where DNA replicates, G2 phase where the cell gets ready to divide, and M phase which is mitosis, the cell divide. So this is what you studied in biochemistry. G1, S, G2 and M. That is how every cell divides. 1 into 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16 and so on. But one thing you would never have realized in your biochemistry lessons is that there is one category of cells which cease division and they sit outside. These are called the reserve cells. These cells don't divide. They just sit outside and watch. So what do they do? Now to understand these cells, you will actually need to watch a football match. I know India is a country where cricket is the game that everybody watches, but let's focus on football. The rest of the world watches football or hockey. While 11 players play in the stadium, there are a few players sitting outside like this. These are the substitutes. Now, what is the role of a substitute? The role of a substitute is to wait and watch the game till the end, but when the situation arises, they are called inside and they come and they play. And when a substitute comes inside, he immediately makes a lot of nice moves to show that he is worth what he is paid for. And he tries to shoot the goal. The same thing, these are the reserve cells or the substitute cells. They sit outside in the bench. And these resting cells come into the cell cycle when proliferation is needed. When an injury occurs, the cells have to proliferate. These reserve cells or resting cells enter the cell cycle. Now this cell cycle itself is stimulated by a few factors, inhibited by a few factors. So normally there is a balance of stimulatory and inhibitory factors. But when an injury occurs, the stimulatory factors increase. And the cell cycle speed shortens so that more cells are produced at the same time to help compensate for the damage. And the body realizes that I have a trauma, I have an injury. Let me reduce the rate of cell loss. So all these are features which occur in tissue regeneration and they are controlled by biochemical factors.